Hi, everyone. I received a question about that video we did about Mark 10:17 to 19 and the related passages in Luke and in Matthew. And this is where Jesus is asked by someone who comes in front of him, kneels down, and says, good teacher, what must I do to have eternal life? And Jesus says, Why do you call me good? And then the following discussion ensues. So Sunshine asked me a question about this passage, and she or he, I think it's a she, you're still adding words to what Jesus actually said. He did not say, do not call me good. That is not in the text. He asks why. He asks a question. So I think it is a she does not think that Jesus is saying, do not call me good. But I'm going to show her, and I wrote her back already. So I'm just sharing with you the letter I just sent her, because actually something very important popped out of the passage that we didn't see before. But yes, Jesus used a rhetorical question, and the purpose of the rhetorical question was to actually say, "Do not call me good." That's the rhetorical flip side of that rhetorical. The rhetorical question he used had a flip side meaning of "Do not call me good." And then he gives an explanation why, because there's only one who's good, and that's God alone. We're also going to see that it actually says something more about the oneness of God in that subsequent half of the verse, and that was kind of changed in the King James Bible by adding 4 words, so you couldn't see that. So we're going to fix that and see this is another John 17:1-3 passage where Jesus is going to affirm there is only one God, and it isn't himself, because he's just said, do not call me good, because there's only one who's good, and that's the Father. So it was an emphatic declarative statement, and it is. And so what Sunshine is doing is saying, well, he posed it as a question. I'm not going to listen to it as a rhetorical question. I think that's ultimately the problem. She doesn't want to hear that because that goes against her what? Beliefs that Jesus is God. And she's not hiding it. Neither am I hiding that I don't agree. But the most important thing is what does the text really mean? And so we're going to look at that right now. All right, so here is my response to Sunshine about her question. I appreciate your persistence. Please let me be more clear. In this Greek sentence, and even in English, the me is conveyed to be one to whom it is wrong to call good. For it begins by the person kneeling before Jesus and calling to Jesus, good rabbi. Jesus responds with an obviously rhetorical question. And then I give a link to the MOUNCE INTERLINEAR, so you can actually see the words why, and there's the Greek words in between. Do you call me ego good athos? Okay, so it's clearly there. And we continue. And we're reading from the AKJV, the Authorized King James. And Jesus said unto him, why call thou me good? Jesus is not asking this to get an answer. Do we realize that? He's not saying, can you tell me why you call me good? He says, why call you me good? It's a rhetorical question. So Jesus is asking it to make a point. You are calling me good. That's the exact import of what he's saying. Jesus then explains why it was wrong. He then immediately answers the point of his rhetorical question. There is none good but one, that is God. That's in the Authorized King James. Well, the Authorized King James has italics where there is and that is exists. So I want to go out and show you this in the Authorized King James. All right, so we're going to go over to the Authorized King James Bible to see something. And by the way, it's kind of difficult to find it because you think authorized, you think the letter L, and everything else is alphabetical except the Authorized King James. So to find the Authorized King James, you have to go to King James, and then right below it is Authorized King James. Just one of those quirky things, but it's well worth it. You're going to see why. So first, let's take a look at the King James. So I'm going to show you the difference between the King James and the Authorized King James. If I go here and it says, there is none good but one, that is God, I have to assume that's what it says in Greek. Now, you can imagine there's some really important, powerful words there. One, God. Could it have anything to do with there being one God or anything like that? Well, the way this is written, there is none good but one, that is God. So it's not clearly anything out of the ordinary. But now we're going to go to the Authorized King James, and we're going to get rid of the words that have been added, or at least we can see what they are. So we'll go to Authorized King James, you refresh. And now Authorized King James is unlike King James because it shows you the italics. The italics were used, you'll see here, there is italicized, and so is the words that is. There are 4 words italicized into how many other words are there? 1, 2, 3. There's only 4 other words. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other words. So out of a 9-word sentence, 4 are fabricated out of thin air. Okay, so why would they do that? We'll speculate in a minute. But my point is, for an order us to know what accurately is there, and did the translators take license that they were not supposed to, and basically trying to shape what we think rather than just help us understand the text? So we'll have to ask that question here as well. But anyway, it's always important to know what's been added so you can make a double decision. And they even say that in the preface. They say none of this was intended to change meanings. It's just to help it make it easier to read. And it's always necessary to transfer from one language to another language to do that kind of smoothing, what they call smoothing out of the text. Otherwise, idioms and things like that just don't mesh very well from one language to the next. And so you have to do that. Anyway, so now we can see it does not say there is, and it doesn't say that is. So without that, it just says none good but one God. None good but one God. All right, so we're going to explore how that could mean something different than what you are thinking. You're thinking Jesus saying there's none good but one God. How about there's well, anyway, let's go take a look at it back on the we're on our PowerPoint so we can study. Okay, so this is how I've translated it. If you can see there at the bottom. So back up here at verse 19. So what you can do sometimes to help yourself know that there's phony words. I mean, I like to call them phony words because I don't trust anything anymore. So anyway, that's just me. But you could just simply say they're not their words. Words that aren't there. Just black them out with black ink inside of your word processor. None good but one God. And I mean, it just screams at me there's something there. So what if there's an is? So just if they can add helping words, well, yeah, you need some helping words here to make it more sense. None good but one God. Yeah. So what's the logical construct? None is good. That's what he must mean. But one God. Now, we don't talk like that, so we would add the word the. So that's how you make helping words that really do help the person understand. But you're not adding a lot of extra words. You're just adding enough to make the sentence make some sense. So the other stuff they added, there is and that is, that was to destroy this and let you not see the reality of what Jesus was saying. So now let's listen to what Jesus is saying. So he says, there's none good but one God, right? That's the essence is that none is good but the one God. That's what he's really saying. And it's set up by saying you're basically wrong for calling me good. None is good but the one God. So Jesus is actually reaffirming here the one God principle. It didn't escape his mind. Now you're going to say, well, wait a minute. Maybe that word one, is that really trying to talk about a numeral, or is that just some sort of adjective or something? It's the numeral. That's how why I decided it really was important. So here is when you break it down, you go to Mark 10, verses 17 to 19, and you go to MOUNCE Reverse Interlinear at Bible Gateway, and this is what you're going to see. Now, notice he doesn't have any of the fabricated stuff here. So had I gone here first, I wouldn't have had even this issue. I would just read what he's saying. No one is, now he has it, no one is good. Well, it doesn't say that. It's none. No one is the same as none. None is good except one God. See, and what he did is, I don't know if you can see this, he added a dash, except one dash God. So he is using punctuation in English to make you think he's not saying one God, he's saying one dash God. So doesn't get into your head that Jesus is emphasizing God is one. They don't want God to be one because they believe God is 3 beings in one being. So if Jesus is emphasizing that he is not that God, and there is a one being distinctly disjoined from him who deserves to be called good, and I don't deserve to be called good, Do you see the problem they have with this passage now? And they to get anywhere close to what it really says is super dynamite. I mean, it blows up their Trinity doctrine completely. So I call this just as powerful as John 17, 1-3, and maybe more explosive. More explosive, if that was even possible, than John 17, 1-3 is Mark. So we're gonna memorize this now. Mark 10 verses, but it's actually Mark 10 verse 18 is the explosion verse. Why do you call me good? It's a rhetorical question, meaning you should not call me good, because no one is good except one God, the one God. And he's emphasizing, I'm not that one God, and that God is one. And it's not a unity of three beings. It's one God, completely distinct from me, and that's why I don't have any attribute of good that you can attribute to me. Sorry, goodbye. Don't use that word with me. I mean, that means he's holding the holiness of God so high above himself that he cannot even be called good in the same sentence with the one God. Do you see the point? This is extremely important to grasp. And what was happening with my good friend Sunshine is she's can't let go, and she can't accept it's a rhetorical question, saying, "No, don't call me good. I'm not good." That's a rhetorical question. Now let's go to that issue, because that was her problem. Oh, and just to be complete the thought here is, do you see on the right side when you go to MOUNCEs, you can click on so if you clicked on see where it says HEIS, you can click that on and it will jump over and give you dictionary definitions, the strong numbers, the Greek number sets, and then all kinds of definitions. And the number one definition is the numeral 1. And it's not a unity number, it's the number 1. I mean, it could mean a unity theoretically, but it's the number 1. So God, the one God, is what Jesus was emphasizing, the numeral 1. So anyway, I think this is a powerful, extremely powerful passage for us to use in the future when people doubt or are having trouble, deciding, do they want to remain in idolatry, which has all the risk of going to hell, versus there's no sin in disbelieving the Trinity. In fact, if you just listen to Jesus, he's telling you over and over again, it's not true. Here's another verse. What could he say more? Do not call me good is the the meaning of the rhetorical statement of, why are you calling me good? Do you see the point? Now I'm going to show you and prove to you how rhetorical sentences can be converted interchangeably. You can take any emphatic statement and you could turn it into a rhetorical statement, and you can take any rhetorical statement and you could turn it into an emphatic statement. So let's go and take a look at the most famous rhetorical question in all the New Testament, and it's one that is very damaging to who, the 13th apostle. So let's take a look at James talking about this. Okay, so let's go, and we're going to look at this rhetorical question in James. I just want to show you that when you try to show somebody a rhetorical question is a rhetorical question, it is in the form of a question, but it's a statement as well, meaning you can flip it over and look at it as a statement. And they don't want to see the statement part of it. They're going to claim you're adding words, but you're not adding words. You're taking the same words and you're stating it as an emphatic version of the same thing that was said as a question. So it's not adding words. So this is how Sunshine dealt with it. She didn't like the way I was reading it in its emphatic form, and she was saying I was adding words. And so I'm responding to her and I'm saying, you're objecting to me reading that Jesus says, do not call me good, claiming I am adding words. Rather, I am rendering a rhetorical question by its proper meaning, word for word. So do not let someone bully you into thinking that you have added a word when you simply are converting a rhetorical statement, a rhetorical question into an emphatic statement. Okay, that's the whole point of a rhetorical statement, a rhetorical question. It's trying to emphasize a point by using a question, which makes you think of the very thing you don't want to think about. But okay. So I say to Sunshine, you are trying to nullify and ignore the literal point of Jesus because doctrinally you don't believe Jesus is an ordinary human being indwelled extraordinarily by the Father, John 14:10. But saying Jesus is not an ordinary man, indwelled extraordinarily by the Father, does not make it so. So she believes he has to be God. He just cannot be an ordinary man indwelled extraordinarily by God. This has never happened. God has never used a human being as the temple of the entire nature of God. And that's what he says I did. Jesus says the Father dwells in me. And so wherever he looks, he just sees the Father working and doing things inside of him. Totally different relationship that even the Holy Spirit, when it comes upon any of us, is nothing. We're going to never have anything like Jesus had. That's an intimacy that only someone very righteous and holy, God's going to even come that close to. But so he is a totally different level of obedience to God that you and I have not even gotten close to. But he's still a human being, and that's very important. All right. Anyway, so here's the thing, the last point on the panel. Hence, why do you call me good does in fact mean do not call me good. Okay, that's the flip side of the rhetorical question. So that's how you can state the rhetorical question as a statement of fact. And so I just want to prove this using James chapter 2 as an example. So I say to Sunshine, let me prove this by showing you the most famous rhetorical question in the New Testament. This will prove a rhetorical question can be restated as an emphatic proposition. When James says in chapter 2, AKJV, verse 14 of chapter 2, and by the way, there's a mistranslation in the AKJV of what profit will it do you? It's what good does it do, my brethren, though a man say he has faith and has not works? Can faith save him? Okay. Do you think James is asking literally, like, can you tell me? Can faith save? Some people think so. The latter is a rhetorical question. It means faith cannot save a person who has not works and only has faith. That's the whole point of the rhetorical question. But you know, there are people who say, well, no, he honestly wants to hear us answer and say, no, we passed the test. Paul says faith without works saves, because that's what he says in Ephesians 2:8-9. Yes, that's what Paul says in Ephesians 2:8-9, but Luther is correct. This passage contradicts Paul. So whether Paul or James is valid depends upon whether James is the bishop of Jerusalem and the 12 had been chosen to be their bishop. Is he more authoritative than Paul, who never speaks any words from Jesus Christ in any of his epistles, has no messages in verbatim form from Jesus in his third heaven to us? Zero, nada, zippo. Or James, the brother of Jesus, who seems to know Jesus' words and his heart and all that. So that's for each person to measure in your own conscience. I think the answer is clear. But anyway, the question here is, how are you to understand a rhetorical question? So he clearly means this rhetorical question to say that James means no, you cannot be saved by faith alone. And then James gives a clue. He's deducing, contrary to Paul, asking in the Greek, what good would it do if you have faith but no works? I.e., as defined, there's no good at all. So that's why that word good being missed by the King James, and who knows why they manipulated that. But it really is saying, what good does it do, my brethren, though a man say he has faith and has not worked? So he's emphasizing, is there any good to that? Anything of goodness in that? And the answer is no, there's no good in that. You just have a belief in facts. And then he says even the demons believe in God. So what does that prove? So we can do a digression into, this is the whole fundamental basis of Paul. His is a Gnostic value system, meaning if you know something, Jesus died, buried, and was resurrected for you, you shall be saved. So, you might as well just pack up all the hymnal books, because why do people even have to go to church if that's true? We all believe that stuff. And we said it 1,000 times when we were at church. We recited the Nicene Creed where we're mandated to say that. So if that were true, what's the whole point of church? What's the whole point of educating and reading the Bible anymore? And that, frankly, is what people eventually conclude. There's no point to it, because you don't even think there's any value to it. You just simply have to believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Okay, but I digress. Let's keep on the point here. So James thus means that faith without works cannot save a man. That is because the question is only rhetorical and not really a question. Of course, James in verse 17 says this is emphatically later. He says, even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead being alone. So saying your faith is dead because you have no works is the same as saying you have nothing of good to show God. So you're going to hell, basically, will not save you. And so that's his point. So getting to what this verse in Mark chapter 12 is, likewise here, why do you call me good is a rhetorical question with an emphatic point. Do not call me good. Then Jesus makes this bluntly clear when you add the explanation to this meaning. He says, you cannot call me good. And then the next sentence is because the one God alone is good. Okay. So it's just too obvious is that that's the meaning of the rhetorical question. It applies more to Jesus than anyone else because that's the rhetorical question has the word me in it. So anybody who tries to subtract that this is Jesus talking about calling himself good is subtracting the word me from the rhetorical question. Why do you call me good? I mean, I don't want to say he's trying to insult the man, but he's trying to get him to say, do you realize you're not supposed to call me good? That's the very point that Jesus is making. And then he makes the point of who is the one who's good, the one God. And he makes it obviously clear that it can't be himself because he's just told you, don't call me good. Thus, I am adding nothing. I'm just getting back to my letter to Sunshine now. Instead, it is you who are removing the meaning because you refuse to understand the words on the page. You need to draw out the meaning of a rhetorical phrase, but you refuse to do so. If you subtract me, Jesus, from the class to which Jesus objected the word good can be applied, and you think Jesus indeed can still be called good like God is good, you have contradicted your master. Can you sleep with that on your conscience? I hope not. Jesus clearly implies it is idolatry. That's the whole point of when God says God is one, God is echad, he means you are committing idolatry when you have another God. You can call him Jesus. You can call him Moses. You could worship, one of the prophets, Isaiah, a king, a ruler. You can make something else God. You can make Mickey Mantle your God, whatever. You have violated the most sacrosanct principle of God, and it's the first commandment for a reason. And Jesus said it's the most important command. And he conjoined the command about having only one God with the command to love God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. So he said that was the most important commandment. And by the way, it happens to be in Mark again. So that's an interesting thing here is we have one more statement in the book of Mark, which is very much like this, where Jesus says the most important command is that God is one. And then he quotes Deuteronomy 6, verse 4 to that effect and goes on to quote it where it says, you will love the Lord your God with your whole heart, mind, and soul. Anyway, okay, so I think that makes the point I had to make out of this. So you can see just out of one little, Sunshine simply said to me, I was adding the word me into the deduction of this sentence, which is just really the emphatic version of the rhetorical question. So I knew that it would just take a second to disclose that to her. And then I'm doing this and I'm going, hey, this verse has not been translated. They've added 4 words and there's 4 little words, but it really did change the meaning. It got you away from seeing that Jesus is saying, let's go back to that just so we have this in our minds. Well, I translate it this way. None is good but the one God. None is good but the one God. So he is emphasizing you cannot call any one good because the only one who that deserves that is the one God. That's kind of what he's saying. So he is emphasizing once again, I'm not good in the sense of God. Only the one God is good. So why are you calling me good? Stop it. And that means also in our prayer time, in our worship time, we have to stop using worshipful labels for Jesus that only belong to God. And in fact, what's really kind of sickening to me, I used to sit in the church and I'd see the Hillsong come on. There's only one God. I can't remember the verses now. I think I blocked it out of my mind. But it basically says, we worship you, God, Jesus. I mean, how offended the word God cannot be used for Jesus. That is exactly the same thing as calling him good. You're using a word that only belongs to the God of the universe because there's only one God. So the very fact that you say there is God the Son is a idolatrous, violative statement of Jesus's principle in this verse. When you flip the rhetorical statement into an emphatic statement, Jesus is saying, you cannot call me God. If you can't call him good, you can't call him God. He doesn't, the expression God is as much something that only belongs to the one God as the word good. So if he's barring you from using the word good about God, how much more so is you can't use the word God to describe Jesus' relationship to yourself. If you call him your God, then you have become an idolater. Now people say, well, wait a minute, didn't Thomas say, my Lord and my God? Well, it's an interesting question. Did he mean Jesus, or did he just simply say, like I would say, oh my God? And I'd say, oh my God, plenty of times, when I'm in shock. Oh my God, God save me, kind of thing. I heard a shock, I heard an explosion or something like that. We do that. If I saw a person suddenly appear in a locked room, I think I might say the same thing. Oh my Lord, oh my God, this is incredible. And people are basing a whole doctrine that you can call Jesus my God because Thomas said that under an exclamatory context. Which is more important? Jesus saying you can't even call me good, let alone call me God, or Thomas in an exclamatory situation where anybody could exclaim the words my God and have nothing to do with Jesus? Okay, nothing about worshiping him as that name. Because if Thomas said that, he's violating this passage of Mark, the words of Jesus. And I don't think you can construe that message of Thomas to contradict the Lord Jesus. It's simply an exclamatory remark that is at best unclear in context. And if he said it and he meant it in an idolatrous way, he probably had to repent later. But it wouldn't make sense to put in the Bible because we don't want to put things in the Bible that would give us a wrong idea, I think. But, God could test you, and on the exam will be, did you believe that statement was about Thomas calling Jesus as God? And did you follow that example? And God's going to say, well, don't you know you're not supposed to do that? Did you not read Mark 10, verse 18? Why call me good? If Jesus told you you can't call him good because there's only one God, why did you think you could call him God? Because Thomas did it? Well, Thomas is just a human being. Didn't Peter tell Jesus you shouldn't go to the cross? And what did my son tell Peter? He said, my son said, get behind me, Satan. So are you saying that Thomas can't sin? Because that's how God's going to confront you about that question. People saying, oh, no, I can always point to that and I get an excuse. I'm off. I get to go home. That's my ticket. I can call Jesus God all day long because didn't Thomas do it? The answer is absolutely not. Because Peter told Jesus something that was wrong. He's not there. We have this ridiculous idea that the 12 apostles are infallible human beings when what was the most obvious thing? They were the most fallible of human beings. They made all kinds of mistakes. That's actually the endearing quality of the apostles. They're not perfect. They're just like us. They make stupid mistakes. The mother shows up with the two sons and they want to vie for who's going to get who's going to sit at Jesus' right hand. Do you see how the sons let their mother go talk to Jesus and say, I want you to put one of my sons at your right hand and the other at your left hand? I mean, come on. These people were unfortunately just human like us, and could make a mistake. So you cannot use the Thomas example to nullify what we're talking about right here. Okay, everyone, before we take off, I wanted to just give us a little guidance on applying these principles. We talked about the words "my God" of Thomas, and what could that mean, and what precedential value is an exclamation. Really, it isn't. It has no guidance. It's not a doctrine. It's not anything. But here's something to think about. John 5, verses 22, 23. This is the MOUNCE transliteral, so you tend to get a better translation also with it. Furthermore, the Father judges no one, but has given all judgments to the Son. So in other words, to give Jesus honor, he gave him something that he doesn't have. So this tells you what? You could call Jesus your judge, and that's something God's given him as an honor that even God isn't taking from Jesus. In other words, he's giving over that judgment to Jesus. It isn't that God can't render a judgment. He's going to give that authority to Jesus. So that everyone should honor the Son. So God wants people to honor the Son as your judge, and maybe for other characteristics in your life. So Jesus is not just a man, as some people say when we talk about that. Jesus isn't God means he has no honor. He has nothing left. No, he has a lot left. just as they honor the Father. So all judgment is given to the Son, so they'll honor the Son just as they honor the Father. So he wants the Son to get honor, although this case is different. So God isn't saying Jesus has all the same honors I have. It's just simply in this case, I'm going to give him a special honor so that people honor him just as they honor me. So he wants his own honor. And Jesus is clear we shouldn't give any honor that only belongs to God to Jesus. So we're learning there's there's a line here. We can honor Jesus as our judge. That makes sense. He's the one who's the prophet, remember? And we're supposed to be judged by every word that comes out of his mouth. So on Judgment Day, we're going to confront Jesus, hopefully in a good way. And we will hopefully pass his test. And he's going to be testing us on his own words and whether we listened and obeyed him. And that's what the role of the prophet in Deuteronomy 18:16-19 is that God will hold accountable everyone to obey all his words. And the person who's going to make that decision is Jesus himself. Who better than Jesus to understand his own words? Then next is the one who does not honor the Son does not honor the Father who sent him. So it's not an option that you can just honor God and the Father and just ignore Jesus. You have to honor both. But Jesus does not have honor for things that only belong to God, like being good. So we learn that from that. Jesus can't have a name above God's name. Okay, God is superior to Jesus. God the Father is superior to Jesus. So he can't have a name above God. Okay, is that true? Can we find that in the Bible? Well, yes, you can. You can see here, let them praise Yahweh's name, Psalm 148, verse 13. For his name alone is exalted. So the only name that's going to be exalted is the name of God, not Jesus' name. Notice, the worship name that we should be worshiping is the name Yahweh, not Jesus, in terms of worship as God. So this is a big mistake because all of our churches violate this, seems to me. And we need to restructure the way we think. Yahweh is completely forgotten in the current church. I believe that. And it really hit me 2 or 3 years ago. Pastor Mike at a church I was attending said, he was talking about the Sabbath has been done away with. The Jewish apostles told us the Sabbath is done with. And he said, and Yahweh was the God of the Old Testament. I'm thinking, my gosh, what are we talking about Yahweh in the past tense, like he's gone and dead? I mean, and so literally struck me. And so the point is that Yahweh isn't dead and his name is always alive. And we need to worship the name of Yahweh. And we're supposed to use the name of Yahweh. Jesus said, I taught them your name, Father, that they would know you. He taught us the name Yahweh. It was in our scriptures, by the way, originally. It was in the Hebrew Matthew because it still existed in the Hebrew Matthew the Jews were keeping for us. They didn't mean to be keeping it for us, but they were trying to keep track of what we believed by keeping a copy of the Hebrew Matthew. And we know we had that in there, but we developed the same idea that the scribes on the Jewish side did later in time, about the 2nd century AD. And we started erasing all the words Yahweh in all of our Bibles. And that's kind of what probably is the justification for them erasing and destroying all the Bibles in the 1st, 2nd, and early 3rd century. So they're all gone. Some survive in the 300s, and we have the Syriac Sinaiticus is probably the only one that survived from the 200s, but all the rest they were systematically destroyed. Anyway, I'm digress. But the point is, the name of Yahweh is the only name to exalt. But what are we told by Paul in Philippians 2:9? For this reason, God highly exalted him, and he did, as judge, right? We learned that, and bestowed on him the name which is above every name. No, 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 no. God never said that. This is Paul on his own saying this. And we cannot give Jesus an authority, a name superior to God. So, I mean, if anything, it would be a name sort of close to God or near God, but to put it above God is wrong. And look at our worship services, everybody. Jesus is given far more attention than Yahweh ever is. There's virtually no worship songs for Yahweh. Our Lord, our God is an awesome God. You can actually listen to it and you think it's about Yahweh, but if you really listen to some of the verses, it seems to be talking about Jesus. So who knows if there's even one song in any given week that even is about Yahweh, worshiping the Creator. And that's the other thing. We need to erase the idea that Jesus was a creator. That is a myth created by Paul in Colossians 1, verses 15 to 17, and in Hebrews chapter 1, and I think one other chapter, 3, I think it is, where both of them are relying upon a mistranslation from the Septuagint Greek of Psalm 102, and I think another Psalm 46, where it actually has God or Lord. The word Adonai said to Adonai, you were the creator. So it has one Lord or a God in Greek speaking to another God, as if there were two gods. And so in Egypt, which is pagan, that wasn't a big deal to put that into the Jewish Bible, showing these translators were pagans, right? And they ended up having, a creator God versus another God who's superior to that. And this is where they created a what's called a demiurge myth, in that the Gnostics picked up on this mistake in the Psalms. And you can see Paul and Barnabas get sucked right into the Gnostic myth, and they start teaching that there's such a thing as a kind of an angel figure who is the creator of the heavens and earth, but there's a Father God who created that demiurge God. Anyway, so just let's not go there. God the Father is the only creator. Paul's got it wrong. Barnabas has got it wrong. God's the sole creator of heaven and earth. And Jesus even said he created them in the beginning, man and woman. And therefore he says the creator is God the Father, not himself. And to give so that's another thing. Jesus says if good can only be used of God, creator can only be used of the creator. And Jesus is not a creator. That is a myth, a fabrication, and frankly, a terrible, terrible lie of Satan that got into the Septuagint Bible. And Paul and Barnabas both got sucked into that myth. And basically, it's a little piece of Gnosticism that still floats around in the church to this day. And it's completely a Gnostic pagan myth that came out of 2nd century, 3rd century BC of Egypt, where the Septuagint was translated out of Egypt into Greek. All right. Anyway, so please, let's get our worship better. Think about it. Pray about your worship. Make sure that you're worshiping the Father when you have Sabbath, Shabbat. When you rest on your Shabbat, pray to Yahweh. Pray to Yahweh every night. Pray to Yahweh every morning. Pray in Jesus' name. You can talk to Jesus. It's okay. There's nothing against talking to Jesus. He's going to be your judge. You can ask him for help, strength. But what did Jesus say? If you keep asking the Father, will he give you a stone? He's telling you to pray to God. And what's the prayer he taught us to pray? Our Father. Who does he expect us to be praying to? The Father. Who is the Father? Yahweh. Is the Father Jesus? No. So who does he expect us to pray to? The Father. Does he ever expect us to pray to himself? He doesn't prohibit it. He says we can pray in his name. And if we pray to Jesus as if he's God, instead of an advocate to God, that's where the mistake, I think, happens spiritually. So we have to pray, Jesus, please, can you help, please intervene, intercede with the Father to help in this situation, whatever it may be. And I think that's a better, safer prayer. Why ever pray or sing anything that would put you at risk of idolatry? Think about it. So you have to start realizing you need to check your brain. If you're saying anything that sounds idolatrous to God, he'll judge you for it. And his number one command is don't be idolatrous. He wants unity of the faithful, at least on the one point of all points, is that he is the one God. That's pretty much the central focus of his creating the Jewish people, was that they would get this concept. And they did. They got it very well. I mean, they did not believe in multiple gods. And there was all these challenges all around them. But the Christian faith has been completely marred since the time of Constantine. We now have been ingrained and made fearful that if we went to have one God, we would be lost. When there's no such, you can't be lost by believing in one God. Just never going to happen. Not if you believe in Yahweh as your one God. Okay. Anyway, I hope this helped everybody. And this is I just want you also to know is I hadn't even seen this whole issue in this verse until this morning. And it just a simple question was from Sunshine was, she thought I was putting a word into Jesus' mouth. When you take the rhetorical question, why do you call me good? And I was translating it as, that means Jesus saying, you cannot call me good. That's totally appropriate rendition of a rhetorical question in an expository sense. And she thought I was adding a word, and I was just trying to say, no, that's not what I'm doing. And in fact, if you take that meaning away from it from the verse, in an expository way, in expository version of it, you are subtracting from God's word. So it works the other way. So anyway, that's what led to all this. And look at that. We found a verse now on the oneness of God, of how to dress and pray to God, and all these things just come out of one little question somebody says. So every day is another beautiful day. God has another message for us to learn. And I pray for your prayer life and your worship time that these things will stir other things in your mind. You'll put them comments down on the YouTube channel so that I can absorb what you're learning, and we can keep growing in the knowledge of the Lord Yahweh of the universe and of our great Savior Yeshua. All right. God bless. Take care, everybody. Good night. Ciao.